So I think if you couldn't already tell by now, I'm a huge fan of the Red Dead Redemption series, kind of a lot. I've always had an obsession with cowboys and the entire Wild West gunslinger era for my entire life, and this series has done an amazing job of being able to fill in this obsession of mine. I love these games so much that I have a Red Dead Redemption 2 poster right above my bed, and my phone case is Red Dead Redemption 2. The only issue that I've noticed with this is besides the Red Dead series, I've struggled to find other big time Western games to fill in the gap of this series. Just like with Grand Theft Auto, I love the series to death, but I have to play other alternative games to it. Now, you obviously have Western titles like Red Dead Revolver, which was the first entry of Red Dead, Call of Juarez, Dark Watch, and many others. However, as good as these games were for the time, they weren't open world games. They mainly served as linear story driven games with an arcadey shooting style to it, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I wanted to find a cowboy game that was similar to Red Dead, and something that told an epic, realistic story because I love open world games. And after a long time and after seeing a bunch of recommendations, I started seeing a bunch of people recommending me to try out Gun. Neversoft's 2005 classic western game Gun is probably the closest resemblance to what the first Red Dead Redemption is, functioning as a full open world experience, allowing you to ride around the open playing fields, different towns, getting caught up in bandit attacks, doing bounty hunting for extra cash, with some light collectibles thrown in it. It was very much ahead of its time for being the first proper open world western game. So in this video, we're going to be taking a pretty deep dive into whether this PS2 classic is actually good and holds up well today, or if a game that was only good for its time and only thrived off its novelty. I know that some people aren't into western culture, but even if you aren't, I hope at some point you will eventually try out this game, because I at least want to get one person who watches this video to play it. Alright, here we go. Gun takes place in Old West America in the year of 1880, taking place in the states of Colorado, Kansas, Arizona, and New Mexico, giving the game that classic spaghetti western feel. Now, if you don't already know, because I didn't, back in the early 2000s, Neversoft was primarily known for the Tony Hawk Skater series, and they respectively wanted to branch out into different genres and not be known for just the same thing. And one genre in particular that had so much potential at the time was the Wild West. Now, there were a few western titles at the time, but they served as arcade shooting simulators that didn't leave too much of an impact. And during the time that Gun was in active development, Red Dead Revolver hadn't come out yet. Not to mention, GTA had exploded open world games in popularity, to the point where literally everyone was making an open world game. Even franchises that weren't open world in the beginning, like Jak and Daxter, became open world because of GTA's influence. It seemed like the perfect time and perfect opportunity to bring an open world western game to the market, and it probably would have been a missed opportunity if they didn't. Neversoft mainly wanted to go for an action-adventure type game that would hopefully appeal to a much more mature audience, so they could showcase just the sheer brutality of what the Old West was like back then, without sugarcoating anything, which I think is one aspect that this game does an incredible job at. They clearly took huge inspiration from the show Deadwood and Blood Meridian, the 1985 novel that I'm in the process of reading. Yes, I do read, thank you very much. And it was cool how Neversoft made an effort to get players to appreciate the story of the game, because as you all know, most players in the 2000s didn't really play games for the story, but mainly for the gameplay, and Neversoft knew this. I mean, how many kids in 2004 actually finished San Andreas for the story? Probably not a lot, but I don't know that because I was born in 2007, and they wanted their players to get fully invested into the story, because as they said, they were shooting for a more epic western adventure story.
We knew that we wanted to be an epic story, a huge telling of a story, and also give the player a feeling of what the Old West really was about.
And of course, with any game, there are going to be some huge struggles while making it, and it is stated that the team went through many hurdles while developing the game, as you have to take into account that they had to make a brand new IP from the ground up that was completely different from the Tony Hawk Skater series. It required more complex mechanics, a bigger world, more advanced AI for the player to interact with, implementing horseback riding, and to be honest, horseback riding is pretty hard to do in video games as a whole. They also did motion capture, which to be honest, I didn't even know PS2 games did motion capture, because I thought for the longest games back then were strictly hand animated cutscenes, which I guess probably explains why the cinematics of this game look so freaking good and put together.
Not till I'm done with you, bitch! Come on! Yeah! Yeah! Like this ride!
Alright, so now we're gonna dive fully into this game, and I'm gonna be highlighting and covering the story while we talk about the gameplay mechanics. Just wanna try something new. Now, the story of this game is very similar to Red Dead Redemption, to say the least. The entire story is all about Western revenge, which I very much love and think is so cool. In Gun, you play as Colton White, a hunter who goes around killing animals to sell for money with his father. The game starts with Colton and his pops Ned hunting for some game along the Missouri River. It's also in this opening section where the game introduces the player to Quick Draw. Quick Draw functions kind of like Deadeye. You just press R2 and the game slows down. The only difference with Quick Draw is, unlike Deadeye and Red Dead, you're not going to be laying down markers and having the game shoot for you rapid fire. The world just kind of slows down a little bit, and not even by much. You're still shooting in real time, and if you're too slow to do it, you're gonna probably get killed. Especially for when enemies are on horses, you better be quick on your feet. You also can only use Quick Draw for revolvers, which I think is a little bit weird, but I guess it makes sense the more you think about it, because Quick Draw is you pulling your revolver out of your holster as fast as you can. I mean, you're not going to be whipping out your damn shotgun out of your ass to shoot in time. But after Colton's father shows him how to shoot, they continue to hunt for game. They kill 3 elks until they accidentally run into a grizzly bear that nearly disintegrates Ned. But we kill the grizzly bear, and our big payday comes in clutch when a riverboat arrives. When we get on the riverboat, Ned starts doing some weird things with the prostitutes. The game doesn't really explain much here, but by the looks of it, it looks like he's trying to keep something a secret. And this actually becomes very important near the end of the game. Seconds later, this sketchy looking feller by the name of Reverend Josiah Reed, who is one of the main villains in the game, comes up to Colton acting very weird and suspicious. Ned tells him to keep a close eye on him because he's acting really weird, but guess what? He kills an innocent woman with a tomahawk, and all of his men ambush the ship. This is the first shootouts in the game, and let me just say, the shootouts in this game, I hate them. Now, I played this game on extreme mode because I wanted to challenge myself and push myself to see if I can actually get through it, because my ego was just like, man, I've played Elden Ring, Jak 2, Bloodborne, we got this in the tank. I shouldn't have really been that surprised because it seems like every game that is at least 15 years old is extremely difficult. The enemy AI in this game, at least on extreme mode, is absolutely top notch. They know exactly where you are, and they have 10 out of 10 aiming, being able to shoot you from literally any angle. It doesn't matter if you're barely visible, they're gonna hit you. It definitely is the type of game that requires multiple attempts at missions. Like, if you're able to beat the mission first try, then good for you, but you typically have to get a feel for how the mission is, like where the enemies are, how many there are, because a lot of missions throw a bunch of enemies at you at once, or how many respawn, what type of weapon they use, how many flasks there are to regenerate your health. It takes time, and it can be very infuriating. But despite this, I like the shootouts in this game. I know I kind of just complained about it, but I mainly like the shootouts in this game for the gore. I was shocked at how gory this game can get. I mean, you can blow people's heads off, legs, arms, feet, and just all of their limbs.
Free up that wheel, Cole.
Or during melee, you can scalp enemies, which there isn't any sort of benefit in terms of gameplay, but you do get that sweet taste of brutality, and I love it. Clearly showing that they were not holding back. Anyways, once we take out a bunch of Reed's men, things start getting chaotic and the entire attack starts getting out of control, to the point where Ned tells Colton to leave the area and to go find a prostitute named Jenny up in Dodge City. He also throws a huge bomb on him, telling him that he's not even his real father.
I ain't leaving you, Pa.
God damn it, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I ain't your father. Now go.
I think, in my opinion, what the story does such a great job at is it hooks the people into the plot immediately. It doesn't take its sweet time getting to the interesting moments. Within like the first 15 minutes, you know that your father isn't your real daddy, and you now have to go find a person that has useful information. The game then cuts to Colton waking up on the shore by an older feller. Okay, I'm gonna stop that. He attempts to rob Colton, believing that he's already dead, which I'm not gonna lie, I would have done the same thing. But Colton regains consciousness and stops him from robbing him and demands who he is. He introduces himself as Honest Tom, to which Cole asks him where Dodge City is and how he needs to get there for something really fast. The game then gives us a proper tutorial for horseback riding. It teaches us jumping, galloping, shooting from the horse, and we even race Tom a few times. The horses in this game for the most part aren't nothing too crazy, obviously janky to bits, but let's be real, well, horseback riding has always been janky in games. You can find them all throughout the open world, as you can't actually own any horse in this game, because throughout your playthrough, 95% of the time whatever horse you're riding is gonna get killed. It gets kind of annoying because you're just jumping from horse to horse as they're dropping like flies. But once we beat Tom in his little horse race, he gets pretty salty and threatens to kill Colton, along with his boys. His main motive for killing him was because Colton was carrying a Halbrahma token, a token that Ned had given to him on the steamboat so that he could identify himself for when he got to Dodge City, which I guess is fitting because his first name is Honest, yet he's anything but honest. And of course they didn't stand a chance. I killed him in like 15 seconds with quick draw, and shortly after this, I rode up a little bit and took a ferry to Dodge City. Dodge City is one of the main two cities in the game. It's heavily modeled from Dodge City, Kansas in real life, and it looks exactly like your typical western town that you see in the films. It has that small town feel with one main road in the middle of it, located in the middle of a giant desert. Well, I guess in this case, two main roads with train tracks. I'll be honest, there isn't really a whole lot of interesting stuff to do in Dodge City. Like, you can play poker and some minor side missions, but the main thing that I personally love about Dodge City is just the vibe and the lawlessness of the town. But Colton enters the Halbrahma saloon and finds Jenny, and when he finds her, a group of men who are part of the Redhead gang get angry at Jenny because they in short want her to give them pleasure, but she doesn't want to, and it just starts a bunch of chaos.
He ain't getting a poke before us.
Let go of me!
Not till I'm done with you, bitch. Come on! Yeah! Like this.
I should also probably mention this, again, you can only use quick draw for your revolvers, but with other weapons, like in this mission where you have to save Jenny from these crazy rednecks, I'm using a rifle, which doesn't allow quick draw. However, what you get with these other weapons is you can enter first person and use the aim down sight mechanic for more precise aiming, and in my opinion, this mechanic of the game has aged like crap, and I found myself literally never using it from like the first time I used it. The game just places the camera right on the barrel, which looks absolutely horrendous, and it's so impractical in the heat of a battle. Like, when I was trying to use it because I wanted to see how the aiming functions, I would literally just always end up dying because I'll be trying to shoot someone, but when I go to turn the camera, it's so unresponsive and janky, and it makes everything much harder. And with the sensitivity being so damn high, no matter how much I change it in the settings, it's not good. I feel like just the basic over-the-shoulder aim would have worked so much better, or even just a proper first-person model would have looked nicer, because nothing about the aiming downside mechanic feels precise or intuitive. There are certain missions where you're basically forced to use it, like that one mission where you have to protect Clay while he works on the Gatling gun. I don't like it, and it's very frustrating to use. But despite that, we kill all these fellows in the saloon, and when we kill the last one who was holding Jenny hostage, we then unlock the Schofield revolver, aka the best revolver in the West. But it gets interrupted by Crude, the brother of the man who Colton killed at the beginning of the mission, burning the saloon down.
I had to replace her.
Get back. Burn it to the ground. That bastard killed my brother.
This is another mission that I was having a really tough time with because it just seemed like there was an infinite amount of supply of enemies that kept respawning. But at the end, there's then this little epic showdown between Colton and Crude.
If you got the balls.
I'm gonna be honest, I was getting super excited because I thought that this showdown was going to be a duel between Colton and Crude. You know, like how Red Dead Revolver had it at the end of each level you do. But when I figured out that it was just going to be a gunfight between him, I was a little disappointed because I was hyping myself up thinking it was something completely different. And I'm actually kind of surprised that this game doesn't have any duels. And I say that because duels are like the most iconic thing of the Wild West. A little bit weird, but once you clear out the gang and protect the saloon, Colton and Jenny go back into the saloon to presumably have sex with each other. I don't know why, but when Colton is putting his clothes back on, Jenny starts to tell Colton how Josiah Reed came into Dodge City not that long ago looking for Sadie, the girl who he had killed at the beginning of the game on the steamboat with the tomahawk. He also learns that the mayor of Empire City, whose name is Hoodoo Brown, knows Josiah Reed's whereabouts. However, before he can actually travel to Empire City, he first has to help the sheriff of the town to fix the bridge for him to cross over. And all you have to do is go around and secure the bridge from Apache Indians from destroying it. And once you finally fix the bridge bridge and are able to cross it. So this is when the game really starts to open up in terms of open world exploration. Now you don't immediately have the entire map unlocked to you, as you'll unlock new areas as you progress through the story. The open world of Gun may not be the craziest and most exciting open world that the PlayStation 2 has offered, as there is a lot of empty barren wastelands with a lot of desert. It does have some grassy plain areas that are scattered around, but about 90% of the map is just desert for miles. And I might sound crazy here, but I'm probably the minority of people who actually doesn't mind this. I'm not gonna flat out say that I love the open world exactly, but I love it in the aspect that it has that awesome spaghetti western feel that I really have always wanted to feel. And I genuinely do think that the open world of Gun feels more western than the Red Dead series. Red Dead Redemption 1 is more western than Red Dead 2, but I think Gun knocks them both out of the water, which I guess should be expected because the main setting of Gun is taking place in 1880, the height of the Wild West, while Red Dead 1 is set in 1912 at the tail end of the Wild West, and Red Dead 2 set in 1899, the decline of the era. And that's really what I love about Gun. I appreciate Red Dead setting, but I want a fully fledged western game when the West is alive and not dying. Throughout your time riding around, you can do various activities like doing bounty hunting for extra cash, and it takes no more than like 30 seconds to complete because the person that you're hunting is always wanted dead or alive. And with how janky this game can be, I always would just kill the person immediately and boom, I get my money. You obviously will be rewarded with more money if you bring them in alive for the extra effort. I just never chose to because I didn't feel like fighting with the game. You can also find yourself getting attacked by bandits, and they're not that hard to take down. You can also mine for gold after you buy a pickaxe from the merchant, which will earn you 10 bucks at a time. And it may seem like, not a lot of money, but it's theoretically the fastest way to make money in the game. Because if you're not just knocking out side missions over and over and over, which I'm gonna be honest, most of them are very boring, money ain't the easiest to obtain in this game. Plus, I think this collectible is really cool because it has clear similarities of the American Gold Rush, despite the game taking place 30 years after the Gold Rush. Although I will say, the biggest incentive for doing side missions in this game is that they will increase your stats. Yes, this game has RPG elements. Things like your quick draw, melee, and health, which actually become very important later in the game because you can also do this with your guns, and it was something that I heavily regretted not doing. More on that later though. And the last bit that I'll say for the open world itself is the town's patience. This is a mechanic that essentially measures how much trouble and chaos you cause in towns, like shooting innocent civilians, starting fights, just Grand Theft Auto style in it. And you'll notice that the more this meter drops, the more the patience level drops, and when it's completely empty, a showdown between the townspeople and law enforcement will attack you. And you can either try and fight all of them, which is a pretty tough task to do, or you can just bail out like me. I think it's really unique because unlike Red Dead, where after killing one person the law is on you immediately, Gun lets you murder people for a hot minute before you reach a certain threshold. And I feel like this feature displays that essence of lawlessness, and you being able to do literally whatever you want without any repercussions. Anyways, once we start the next mission where we have to travel to Empire City to meet Hoodoo Brown, we get attacked by a bunch of Apache Indians the entire way there, and force me to go through this long, hard battle with them. But once we deal with them, we finally arrive to Empire City to meet the man himself, Hoodoo Brown, which is a very weird name. Upon arriving at Empire City, Jenny introduces him to Cole, to which Hoodoo Brown deputizes him in order to make it easy for him to find Josiah Reed, the creepy preacher. However, not even 5 minutes later after meeting him, we're then informed that there's a resistance gang in town led by Chavez E. Chavez, who's an outlaw that needs to be held accountable according to the game. So we and the boys saddle up and head to the ranch to hunt him down. Yet when we get there, we turn up empty-handed, but we do find the couple that owns the ranch house, and instead of just leaving the premises like normal people, one of the deputies that Colton had ridden with had decided to murder both of them in cold blood for no reason, and Colton, obviously shocked by this, tries to arrest them, and of course it's not going to come without a fight. So we now have to kill the deputies, and oh my lord, this boss fight was so hard for no reason. I think what made this boss fight so damn difficult than the other ones was that, one, there's two enemies, one of them is on a horse and they can literally just two-shot you, and the game doesn't give you the ability to sprint. I think that's the most infuriating part of this game, because not being able to sprint was just killing me. It makes trying to evade bullets from enemies and just trying to escape the fight so much more harder. The game does have a rolling mechanic, which I didn't even know was a thing until like the second to last mission, but I wasn't a complainer and I eventually killed both of them. Only took me about 2 hours to do, but I got a new selection of weapons, which is nice. And after we kill these deputies, Colton returns to Empire City to confront Hoodoo Brown on what the hell was going on and what the hell his real intentions are. He then tells him that the preacher he's after is upstairs with Jenny, and when he gets up there, well...
Jenny! No!
She gets her neck slit open, which I don't know why Colton didn't just shoot him right here. I mean, he has quick draw. Use it. He eventually wakes up from being knocked out by Hoodoo, and he's greeted to a new man sitting across from him, Thomas Magruder, the boss of Josiah Reed and Hoodoo Brown. This is the guy who is supposedly responsible for Jenny's death and the ambush on the steamboat. The game implies that he and Ned have some history with each other. It doesn't say what their history was, but we can probably guess that they had some bad falling out. We're then thrown into a prison cell waiting to be hanged, where here we meet our cellmates Soapy and Port, who are members of the Resistance gang. We somehow managed to break out of the prison by killing one of the guards, and we're then tasked with stealing 4 horses and rallying them underneath the bridge of the city as sort of getaway vehicles, so all of our allies have mounts to escape Empire City. And this mission is mainly us just stealthing around. I know. Stealth isn't used a whole lot in this game, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the stealth in this game is weird. Like, there's some missions like this one where you can either use it or just go guns blazing, and then there's other ones that actually fail you if you don't use stealth and go guns blazing. Also doesn't help that the actual stealth mechanic in this game sucks ass. The game gives you a bow and arrow, but for some reason anytime I use it, it's like the enemies weren't even phased by it and they knew exactly where I was, even if they weren't looking at me. There's also no cover mechanic. Like, your only real way of stealthing is you literally just crouching, and it feels very awkward maneuvering your way around without being seen. I don't even know why stealth exists in this game, because when you look at it fully, it's an action fast-paced shooter game, and I don't think players would have cared if stealth wasn't in the game, because a lot of times it just throws off the entire pacing of the game, but to each their own, I guess. But it doesn't really matter too much because the entire town eventually catches on to what we're doing, and we have to shoot our way out of it, and we eventually ride out to the Resistance hideout spots and meet Clay Allison, the leader of the gang.
Port, are you blind? This is one of Hoodoo's boys. Search him!
I personally think this scene is really interesting. After Clay has Colton searched and realizes that Colton isn't any threat, Colton finds out that Clay and Ned used to actually work underneath Thomas Magruder during the Civil War 20 years prior in the early 1860s. He was a Confederate major that was in the lost city of Corvier searching for gold, and he was a very ruthless person who murdered literally anyone who got in his way.
Jesus, Tom.
Having time for games, Doctor.
Stop it, Tom. I never agreed to this. Count it!
And it scenes like this, once again, shows that cold-hearted brutality of what the Old West was like. Ruthless corporate people who have far too much power and using that to their advantage. So I'm sure, as you could guess by now, the main goal is to now kill Thomas Magruder and all of his men that try to stop us along the way. To do this, we join and become a part of the Resistance gang and set off to destroy one of his trains, and when we do, we find out that there's a boxcar full of Apache Indians that Thomas Magruder had been using as slaves. I told you he's not a very good guy. Conveniently, the chief of the Apache Indians, Manny Wound, shows up at the scene, and he's like, "Thanks, Cole, for freeing my men, but like, you kind of murdered all of my guys at the bridge in Dodge City." But they thank him and ride off without starting any problems. I also think this part is really cool because this entire scene, the chief is speaking in Apache language, and Colton seemingly is able to understand it, which theoretically shouldn't be surprising, because his, well, fake daddy, Ned, was always around Native American tribes like the Apache Indians because he was a mountain man and a trader, and this would have resulted in Colton being exposed to this type of language from a very young age, and being able to pick up on the communication. It was just kind of weird at first because it was like, what the fuck? How's he able to understand it? Nevertheless, we're right back up to camp to throw a little celebration with the boys.
Good to see the boys cut loose, huh? Maybe their last time before Magruder comes knocking.
Don't get too excited because as we're just having a drink, Magruder's boys show up and attack our base. This part is really hard because there are so many enemies, but I feel like I've already talked about how hard these missions are, so I won't really talk about them. Once we win the battle, we find out that Clay had been captured by Magruder's men and taken back to Empire City, so like the badasses we are, we wheel in this cannon and let it rain bullets right in the middle of the city. Back inside, Hoodoo Brown has Clay captured, and when he realizes that we're coming to save him, he leaves him to die, and when Colton gets to him, he's alive. And if I'm perfectly honest, I genuinely thought that he died when Hoodoo Brown stabbed him in the neck and left him for dead. And it's like, yeah, I'm glad that he's not dead. I don't want any of our boys to die, but it's like, how are you alive, bro? Nonetheless, we get Clay out of the area into safety, and in dramatic fashion, we take Hoodoo Brown down and have an epic final confrontation with him. He tries to make amends with Colton to try and save himself by saying that Sadie, the woman on the steamboat who got tomahawked, had stored something very important on the boat before it crashed, the thing that Ned was keeping a secret in the beginning.
I'm Hoodoo Brown!
You were.
However, before we can go to the crash site to retrieve whatever is there, we first have to go back to Dodge City to save Soapy, who was being hanged for cheating in a card game, which I'm not laughing, but to go out like that because you cheated in a game of poker is hilarious. We shoot the person next to him, and all of us escape Dodge City to the crash site. And as we're looking for the steamboat, we find ourselves at the wrong place at the wrong time. Yes, we end up getting caught by the renegade army, Sergeant Hollister as their leader. They throw us into their fort with some Native Americans from the Blackfoot tribe, which they follow us as we try to escape the fort. And this is one of the missions that I was talking about that incorporates forced stealth. Again, very annoying, and I don't know why it's designed like that. But once we take all of them down one by one, we head back to the Blackfoot camp and talk to the Blackfoot chief about going back to the renegade army's fort and destroying it. Not a very good idea, but we do it anyway. And I'll say, this is probably my favorite mission in the entire game. So much stuff is going on. Things are exploding all around us. We're murdering all of the corrupt soldiers, exploding all of their ammo bases, killing people on Gatling guns. It's an incredible mission, and I really did enjoy every second of it. Only thing I didn't enjoy about this section of the game is when we had to kill Josiah Reed at the crash site. Because let me tell you, this is probably the hardest boss fight in the game. Before we kill Reed, we first have to kill Hollister, which was already kind of hard, but you kill Hollister, crack open the safe, and retrieve part of the Golden Cross of Coronado, and then seconds later, Reed shows up. During the fight, he regenerates his health when he gets far away from you, and the annoying part about this is his health will fully fill up if you don't stop him in time. So if you get him to like half health and he veers away and you don't chase after him and you just stop and just sit there, his health will keep refilling until it's at max health again. He can land his shots no matter where you are or where he's at. It doesn't matter if he's mid dodge roll or if you just barely peek around the corner, you're gonna get shots. It gets even more frustrating when he can just kill your horse in like 3 seconds, but his horse is made of steel when you shoot at it. And again, keep in mind, I was playing on extreme mode, so I was getting my ass kicked. I probably fought this motherfucker 200 times, and it got to the point where I just had to use different cheese tactics to beat him, which I didn't want to do, but I just gave up. And you bet your ass I was excited when I defeated him.
This is for Jenny.
In the next mission, where Colton meets up with Many Wounds again, there's then this flashback where it shows Many Wounds as a young boy. His mom and dad and a healer get brutally murdered by Magruder. And shortly after they're murdered, Ned wakes up. I don't know how this guy's alive, but Many Wounds gives him a baby that he was hiding with. And the baby that Ned would go on to raise is, of course, Colton, who is now on a mission to kill Magruder. Also to mention, Many Wounds hands him the other piece of the Golden Cross and tells the exact location where the Lost City of Gold is, the place where Magruder was searching for. And on our last journey there, we find ourselves going through many more battles with the renegade army until we eventually make our way into the mountain to kill Magruder. But instead of just shooting him point blank in the head, we leave him pinned down as the mountain slowly starts to collapse, and as he and the Lost City of Gold get buried for good. And just like that, we escape the mountain with Many Wounds and go on with our lives. Roll credits. The story may not be as compelling as Red Dead Redemption is, but Neversoft's main goal was to make an epic story for the player to follow in an open world format. I do wish the game was a little bit longer, because if I played this on normal mode, I probably could have beaten this game in like 2 days or so, which is mostly due to the fact that this game has a ton of cut content. I'm not going to go through it entirely, but in summary, near the end of the game where Many Wounds gives Colton the second piece of the Golden Cross, Colton was supposed to go to a completely new area called the South World, which was basically a giant Saharan desert in Mexico, which was going to be used for him to find more clues exactly where the Lost City of Gold is. There was going to be another town, spaghetti western style gunfights, and him blowing up the entire town with dynamite. And by the sound of that, that sounds pretty badass. But they scrapped it due to money and of course time. Kind of a bummer that this didn't make its way to the final version, but it is what it is. But you might be wondering, what happened after the game came out? Well, a few things. The game was released onto the Xbox, GameCube, Windows, Xbox 360, and even the PSP, going under the name Gun Showdown. It's still the same as the base game, but it's a little bit different and includes new content and specific mechanics for the actual console. And as of today, the game has sold around 1.4 million copies, which isn't anything close to Rockstar Games, but it's still a decent amount for a new IP in 2005. It also shouldn't be a surprise that this game was subjected to controversy when it came out. Of course, you have the extreme extreme violence and brutality, but then you have other things that people took huge offense to, like the different remarks to women and all of the different cultures like the Native Americans. In fact, the Association for Native Americans started to boycott Gun after Activision published it, stating how the game wrongfully depicted and portrayed Native American groups, even trying to get the game pulled from shelves. This then led to Neversoft and Activision coming out to respond to the criticism by saying, guys, look, it's fiction, it's not real, it isn't meant to be offensive, we just wanted our game to be realistic. Because it's true, Native Americans were very much involved in the Old West, but they weren't having it. Thankfully, the game wasn't altered and removed, and to be honest, this isn't really new when it comes to having different cultures in different video games. Rockstar does this literally all the time in their games, and 10 times out of 10, it leads to controversy. Max Payne 3 stereotyping Brazilian people, Red Dead 1 Mexico, so on and so on. Also to add, due to the game not achieving like blockbuster numbers, the game never got an opportunity to get a sequel, unfortunately, because, you know, they were probably thinking, you know, well, what's the point of spending all this money and time on a game if it's not going to get a bunch of people playing it? Which is funny because that same year they released Guitar Hero and that sold 25 million copies, so there's that. I've been dying to look for more Western games to fill in my needs for the genre, and I will keep looking until Red Dead 3 comes out. Thank you all for watching to the end of this video. We recently just hit 3,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane to me. It's still kind of crazy that this many people are actually watching my videos, because like 3,000 people, that is a lot of people. And, you know, it really means a lot to me that you guys actually like stick around, watch my videos despite me uploading or struggling to upload every month. But I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya.